Hello and welcome back to Karma Stories. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have some stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. As you can tell in this intro if you're watching the video, I'm not on camera today. I am recovering from being sick for the past 3 or 4 days, and I believe in this recording I still sound a little congested, so I apologize for that in advance. I hope you all don't mind. Let's just get right into it. It's time to jump right in. This story comes to us from Alcuna. In order to couple trains, the book says to make them kiss. This story of malicious compliance was shared with me by my grandfather many years ago, so some details may be lost, and I'm not sure about all of the job titles. However, I will do my best to convey the main idea as I recall it. My grandpa used to work for the railroad as a signalman. His role was to ride the back of the train and use a lantern to communicate through signals to the train driver at the front. At that time, trains were much shorter than they are today. In modern times, safety regulations are written in blood and have good reasons behind them. My grandpa said that back in those days, safety protocols were still being developed, and those working on the trains had a better understanding of what was truly safe and effective, as opposed to what the rulebook suggested. A bit more information, the mechanism that connects trains is called a coupling, and the two parts come together, lock, and they're solidly connected. Now, to compare the situation to Legos, you don't just delicately set one Lego on top of another and expect them to connect. You have to put these bits of plastic together firmly enough to get that snap noise. Train couplings are similar, only we're talking about metal carriages that are weighed in tons, not tiny plastic bits measured in grams. So, instead of a snap, you need a good proper bang. Onward to the actual story. The train depot had recently hired a new manager. I'm not sure if they have an official title, so I'll just refer to him as a manager, who decided to be very by the book. He very quickly became hated by everyone, because the rulebook of the time was written by someone more concerned with creating arbitrary rules rather than ensuring things would actually work. Grandpa grabbed his lanterns and jumped into the caboose at the end of a line of trains. The engine backed up along the track to prepare for coupling, and the manager came running out, yelling and waving his arms. The engine driver and the manager argued back and forth, and even Grandpa could see the engine driver's exasperated sigh from the back of a train. Malicious compliance was initiated. The engine slowly backed along the track until the couplings came together in a gentle kiss, or as gentle as two multi-ton titans can kiss. The chain of trains didn't even shudder. The engine driver then moved forward, leaving the line of trains behind. The couplings touched, but there was no bang to signal their connection. Grandpa signaled that it didn't work. The train stopped, then slowly and gently reversed again. Another kiss, but no coupling. Pulled forward, backed up, tried again, kiss, no coupling. This repeated for 15 minutes before the engine driver and the manager got into another argument. Grandpa said he could guess the argument. This isn't working and we're wasting time. We need to get back on schedule. Nope, keep following the book exactly. No deviation. The book says this will work, so follow the book until it does. 15 more minutes passed of kiss, no coupling. Pull forward, back up, try again. They had been at it for 30 minutes by now, and the train was officially behind schedule. However, the manager was still insisting that they must keep doing it by the book. Finally, someone higher up, the depot or station master, came along trying to find out why the engine was acting like the slowest pendulum in existence and why they had wasted half an hour. After getting the story from both the engine driver and manager, Depot Master finally told the manager to shut his howling screamer and let the people who actually work on trains get the job done. This stupid process had gone on long enough, and it was painfully obvious that the book was wrong. The manager crossed his arms and was steaming. The engine pulled forward a bit more than by the book. The whistle blew its warning call, and then came in reverse at a good clip. Obviously not at full ramming speed, but fast enough to get the job done. Bang! The line of trains shuddered gently, then the engine pulled forward. The trains were finally coupled. Grandpa signaled all good, and the train got underway. Grandpa didn't get to hear the reaming, but the manager looked like a little boy getting the scalding of his life as the caboose passed him on his way out of the depot. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called Bitterologist. It says, It is possible to couple trains real gently, but it also depends on the circumstances. Sometimes, like when it's snowy and cold, you need a bit more oomph for it to connect properly, but do it with too much enthusiasm and things will end up breaking. I saw a rail car once where the entire coupling was sticking out of the floor of the driver's cabin at a 45-degree angle. Someone had been in a hurry apparently. During the years I worked as a train driver, I usually took great care to do it really gently. So I guess what OP is saying in this one is that you really need to make the train cars kiss. But it's not a light peck. It's like, when you're in the backseat with your prom date, that kind of kiss. Honestly though, I take my hat off to all of the shunters working in the train yards, getting all of those trains connected and moving around all that heavy steel. It's a difficult and dangerous job and you get my utmost respect. This story comes to us from Go Hakuna Your Tatas. My jacket isn't corporate approved, neither are any of the ones here. This is my boyfriend's story, not mine, full disclosure, but he gave me permission to put it up. He's just too lazy and doesn't have a Reddit account. He framed this story by proudly telling me his boss learned who not to be petty with today. While working in the back of the store, my partner was wearing his personal sweater. He was between a break room and a freezer and couldn't be seen by any customers. His manager, who just got there, immediately got on his case. He tried to explain reasonably he'd have it on for maybe 15 minutes max and remove it before going back out onto the floor. The manager refused and begins pestering him and telling him he needs to remove it immediately under the reasoning it wasn't corporate approved. Cue Malicious Compliance. The jackets they use for their coolers, not corporate approved. The gloves they use in the same coolers, not corporate approved. The communication system they use to talk amongst themselves in the store, not corporate approved. An hour or so later, my partner is going about his janitorial and stocking duties, having to work in the cooler to restock. Every 5 to 10 minutes, he'd come out of the freezer shivering and trying to warm up. After about 20 minutes of this, the same manager wandered over to them critically. "What are you doing? Stocking the freezer, but it's pretty cold in there. Well, why don't you grab a jacket and some gloves?" Oh, because if you actually read our employee book surrounding our uniform, these technically aren't corporate approved either. The manager grumbled and wandered off, only coming to find him in another hour and a half. "I've been trying to reach you over the communication system for the last 20 minutes. Why aren't you responding?" "Oh, that's because they're actually not corporate approved, unfortunately." "You're really going to be this petty?" "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just following corporate standards." It went like this for his entire 7-hour shift. At the end of his shift, the manager wandered up to him with an exasperated look. "I get it, okay? I need to know how to pick my battles." You absolutely do. If I didn't know him personally, I probably wouldn't have believed he actually said that to them, but he almost certainly did. He cares very little what anyone thinks, laugh out loud. Jumping down to the comments on this one, there's one from a user called BubblyConfidence724. They quoted OP when they said, "You're really going to be this petty? Sir, you are the one who is starting a petty war. I am just the one who's going to end it." There's another way that OP could have answered that question as well. When the boss said to them, "You're really going to be this petty?" They could have said, "I learned today from you that pettiness is corporate approved." So we do need to give the boss a little bit of credit for recognizing they made a mistake, but they didn't apologize, so it's not a whole lot of credit. This story comes to us from Sad Puppy Eyes. "So, insurance company, you won't give me a letter with a clean driving record?" I was grumbling about insurance companies in another thread and led me to this memory. My wife was driving in Toronto many years ago. At an intersection, she waited at the red light, and then the advance green left arrow lit up and she started turning left. Other vehicles coming the opposite direction also had the same green left arrow for them to turn left. It's pretty standard stuff. Everyone's been through those while driving. Unfortunately, the driver coming straight the other direction wasn't paying attention. He saw the vehicle next to him start moving, turning left, so he did too, going straight through the red light and crashing into my wife. So I called the insurance company. I'm thinking this is pretty straightforward. My wife was legally turning left, Buddy ran a red light and hit her. Nay, they tell me. My wife was turning left, so regardless of right of way, she's deemed equally at fault. She should have anticipated someone would run the red light and waited to make sure he was going to obey the law. I grumbled, but they stood firm. The ruling was horse crap, but it wasn't a fight I was going to win. The damage was mostly cosmetic to the side of the car, $4,000 to repair, but the car was perfectly drivable and wasn't unsafe. It was also an older second vehicle we rarely drove anyways. So instead of getting it repaired and watching my rate subsequently go up 100% over the next 5 years, we shrugged and told the insurance company that we wouldn't claim it and would take care of it ourselves. Fast forward 9 months and we're moving somewhat unexpectedly to another province. My insurance company doesn't have jurisdiction in that province, so I need to change companies. I do, and new company wants a copy of my clean history from my old insurance company. When I contact old insurance company, the female employee at the counter tells me they can't give me a clean driving record because we were in an at-fault accident. So they will have to tell the new insurance company that. I gave them my best "are you freaking kidding me" look. She refuses to budge. Rules are rules, and it would be dishonest. Rules are rules? Okay, I go home and look up the company's rules. It seems that I have 1 year to process a claim. I come back an hour later and smile at the nice lady. I tell her that if I'm going to get held liable for the accident on my record, I darn well might as well fix it. I'll have it fixed, get a rental car throughout, and basically run the repair bill as high as I legally can. And then I'll send a notice to the company head office explaining what I did and why I did it, advising them that I admired your integrity, reading her name tag, Mrs. Karen Smith, in not providing the letter, even though you cost your company over $5,000 in unnecessary expenses. I got a long pause. Well, maybe we can find a workaround. And 10 minutes later, she ended up providing me a letter stating that I had a claims-free driving history with the old insurance company. Not accident-free, claims-free. That satisfied the new insurance company, and life went on. Man, insurance companies are the devil. Alright, I've got a question on this one for anybody who works in the claims department or is an adjuster at an insurance company. Let me know how you go to sleep at night. No, just kidding. Let me know exactly how these things work. Are you actually required to find any reason possible to not pay out the claim, or find a reason for the other person's insurance to pay out instead of you? Let me know in the comments down below, because I've never really had to use my insurance, so I don't really know how it works. This story comes to us from Tall Charge 2094. Need the section van cleaned? No problem. I've been a long-time lurker in the sub, and I've been debating for a while on whether or not to post this. I think enough time has passed that there should be no issues with it, but I will still refrain from talking about time frames, people, and things like that. Sorry in advance if the writing isn't too great. This is actually my first story post I've ever done. Background: I was deployed overseas for a year in a hot, dry country in the Middle East. This was a routine deployment, with people generally saying that the worst part of the experience would be boredom and having nothing to do. That's how it was supposed to be for my section, but I would soon find out that things wouldn't work out that way. If you're not familiar with how the structure is laid out, my platoon is part of a section, which is part of a company, which is part of a division. We had an OIC, officer in command, who was assigned to be in charge of our section. One thing to know about this guy is that he had a record of being an overachiever, and not in the best ways. OIC would pitch ideas about doing exercises and operations specifically because he wanted to have bullet points on his evaluation report at the end of the year. This led us to be constantly doing redundant stuff, but it's the military, so that kind of stuff is expected. The issue with OIC being so gung-ho about getting his bullet points is that he would take everything to the extreme, and he genuinely did not know anything about how our equipment worked or what our jobs were. As an example of how frustrating this can be, he told us we needed to accomplish Task A, and we would have 2 weeks to do it. We told him, "Sir, in order to do Task A, we need at least 4 weeks with our current manpower and workload to accomplish that." OIC would blow us off and tell us that we need to find a way to do it in 2 weeks because he said so. Keep in mind, this man has no idea what it is we do, and is blowing off all of the input that we are giving him. In the end, we did manage to accomplish Task A by pulling 24-hour rotations around the clock with an 18-hour workday for 3 weeks straight. Keep in mind that this is a bullet point for this man. There's no mission here. There's no lives on the line. This guy just wanted to pad his own resume. When we told him that we physically could not meet the 2-week deadline for Task A, he dressed us down and chewed us out saying we were dragging butt, and this is absolutely unacceptable. It was like this non-stop for the first 6 months of my deployment. We would be outside all day setting up our worksite, accomplish whatever redundant task OIC would be making us do, we'd tear down the worksite, then we'd move the worksite to the next spot and set up there. It was constant cycle of build up, tear down, move equipment, repeat. All while OIC would tell us how we're lazy and never did anything because we would go over whatever timeline he came up with. The worst part of all this is when it started getting into the hot season. It would be 120 to 130 degrees, and we would be in non-air conditioned Humvees in full Kevlar kit, moving equipment, and pounding grounding stakes into the rock ground all day, every day. There was multiple people, including me, who had heat-related injuries from this experience. All of this is happening while our OIC is chewing us out non-stop from his air-conditioned office. The van. All of this was pretty crappy, but not unheard of when it comes to the military experience. However, this is where it starts to get juicy. One day, there was a new task given to our section. The task was sent down by OIC himself. The task was, clean our section-assigned van. We all need to do our part. As you read earlier in this post, we as a section had to use oven-hot Humvees for all the tasks we were given for the months leading up to this incident. Everyone in the section had the exact same reaction to this task. We've had a van this entire time? Come to find out, OIC didn't want to walk the half-mile to chow every day, so he secretly commandeered our section van with crisp cold AC so he wouldn't get sweaty in the desert heat on his way to the dining facility. As you can guess, people were irate over this news. We have been having people drop from heat exhaustion, and this guy has been using a van meant to be shared as a section as his own personal vehicle. The only reason it came to light is because someone much higher ranked than himself needed to use the van to get to the airport. So OIC wanted us plebeians to clean out the van that he kept to himself and made messy on his own, because obviously we all need to do our part. Cue Malicious Compliance. I had a sergeant in charge of me at the time who I will call Sergeant Z's. He was a bodybuilder and an amazing sergeant. When he found out about the news, he called a huddle for the platoon. He knew exactly how we all felt about the situation and made a few things clear. As the order needs to make its way down the chain of command, it needs to go through him to get to us. Sergeant Z's made it clear that he felt the situation was unethical, and he refused to give us the order to clean the van. He said, "I will not be sending my troops to do a task that was given to us from an ivory tower. Instead, he and one other sergeant will be doing the task themselves." Sergeant Z's and the other sergeant took the van to the PX on base. He then loaded up on Q-tips, trash bags, and cleaning product. He then went back to the bay and grabbed his very loud JBL speaker. Sergeant Z's then parked the van at the entrance of the division command tent. This man blasted the army recruitment song at full volume while he and the other sergeant cleaned the van out with Q-tips. There were many upper cadre who stopped by either on their way out or to the command tent wondering what the commotion was about. Sergeant Z's was more than happy to explain the situation. OIC told us he wanted us to clean his van because everyone needs to do their part. No one told him to stop, and after 4 hours of the army soundtrack, the van was pristine. He turned it back in, and we assumed that was the end of it all. It was a little funny, and we all felt a massive morale boost after being punted into a corner this entire deployment. Aftermath. What ended up happening shocked a lot of us. The division OIC, our OIC's boss, heard about some contention around an incident with a van outside of the division command tent. Apparently, some of the high brass there thought it was rude and annoying to the people coming and going. There also were complaints that during this time, Sergeant Z's was wanted for his expertise in our field of work, but he wasn't available to help because he was cleaning the van. This caused him to want to look into what caused the entire debacle. The DOIC, Division Officer in Command, held a town hall meeting. A town hall meeting is held by the Section First Sergeant where anybody can bring up any issues or concerns they have without fear of repercussions. Normally, this type of event is more administrative than anything else. You guys are good? No, First Sergeant. There's mold in our barracks. and no hot water. Little things like that are what's normally talked about, and it generally takes about an hour to sort through it all and finish the meeting. This town hall meeting, however, took 5 hours. The first sergeant was shocked at the revelations that came out of it. We talked about how we haven't had a real day off since we've been boots on the ground, how OIC hasn't been at site once this entire deployment, how we're being reprimanded for timelines that aren't possible, etc., etc., and of course, we talked about the van. After the 5-hour-long town hall meeting, the first sergeant was visibly enraged. He was very upset with how our OIC was handling things, and even more upset that this was happening under his nose this entire time, and he wasn't aware of any of it. He took everything he heard and brought it up to the DOIC, and we were told there would be action taken on our behalf to fix this. Fast forward 1 week, and we have not heard a peep from the OIC. This would continue for the rest of the deployment. OIC didn't give us a single task, job, or detail for the next 4 months. It was fair to assume he got quite the chewing out, and the only reason he kept his position was due to there being no one to take his place. Every time we would see him, he looked like a sad puppy, and you could tell his deployment was not going the greatest anymore. Normally, the tail end of deployment is one of the busiest times for my section. We have a ton of equipment that needs to be packed, organized, and inventoried. It's a pretty big workload, but after the amount of work we had to do for the first 6 months, those final months felt like a holiday. The timing for the relaxed workload came just in time for Space Marine 2 to come out. Those last 4 months were amazing. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called TailXBat Reddit. It says, I've never been in the military, but I can't imagine being a superior officer and not doing the management by walking around thing. You get so much good information that way. Missed opportunity. Also, what a dick. I don't know, OP. I think maybe he was taking the van because he had other things to do with it as well. You know, like maybe carrying around the big boxes of crayons. Alright, I think we'll end this one here. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow us on your preferred podcasting platform. If you're on Spotify, remember you can rotate your phone now and get the video there as well. I thank you all for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.